Hey guys, this is Miss McAllister. So in order to help keep things moving in language arts, we're going to do a little video today to go over our subjects and verbs so that we don't have to spend as much time on grammar in class. So if everyone could grab their subject and verb packet that I gave you during class today, it should look like this. Okay, make sure you have something to write with. Anything that I talk about doing or that you see happening on the screen should also happen on your paper, and I'll be checking that tomorrow. Okay, now make sure you're following along and paying attention to instructions, because if I look at your paper and it's not what I told you to do, then I'm going to assume that you weren't watching the video. Alright, so let's start with subjects. Now, this is going to be very important because when we get to complete sentences and improving our writing, subjects are going to be something we talk about a lot. The subject is the noun or pronoun that our sentence is about. Okay, so a couple questions you should ask yourself if you're having trouble finding the subject. Who or what is the sentence about, and who or what is performing the action? Okay, but you have to remember the subject will always be a noun or pronoun. So I have a couple examples. The students learned about rules and procedures. So our subject is students. You see it's in bold there. If I ask myself, who or what is the sentence about, you can see it's about the students, because they are the ones who are performing the action of learning. Okay, now my second example, she is sick. Here we have our subject, she, a pronoun, but this time she isn't performing any action. Okay, we have a linking verb is, but she is still who the sentence is about, so we can figure out that that is our subject. Now, one other thing I want you to notice, our subject is usually going to be towards the beginning of the sentence. So about 95% of the time, your subject is going to come towards the beginning. So when you're looking for a subject, you want to look for a noun or pronoun towards the beginning of your sentence, pretty much always before the verb. Alright, so let's look at a few examples. The car screeches to a halt. So I want to find the subject in this sentence. So I'm going to be looking for a noun or pronoun at the beginning of the sentence, and I'm going to be asking myself, who or what is the sentence about, or who or what is performing the action. So here, looking at it, I'm going to say that my subject is going to have to be car. It's a noun at the beginning of my sentence, and we see it's performing the action. It is doing the screeching. Alright, let's look at number 2. The man yells at the child. So here, our man is going to be the subject. So he is the one performing the action of yelling, okay? And as always, it's going to be a noun towards the beginning of our sentence. All right, our third one, the plant is dying, okay? So looking at this one, I'm looking for, who or what the sentence is about, okay? I see it's mostly about our plant, and that the plant is also performing the action of dying. So I know that one's going to have to be my subject. Alright, so now what I want you to do, take a look at sentences 4 through 6 and go ahead and try to find the subject in each of those sentences. Once you find them, circle them or underline, do something to mark them on your paper. Alright, so let's check and see how we did. Hopefully we did pretty good. We just had these first 3 to get started with. Make sure as we go through this, you're correcting yourself on your paper. So we have number 4, the bird squawked when the cat grabbed its tail. So our subject should have been bird. The bird is the one performing the action of squawking. Okay. In number 5, she struggled to move the couch by herself. Our subject should be she, the pronoun. She is struggling. She is performing the action. And in number 6, we should have picked it. This one's a little tricky. It was difficult to see the screen. There's not really anything happening here, right? It isn't performing an action, really. So in that one, I would just have really tried to look for my noun or pronoun towards the beginning of the sentence, okay? Alright, so verbs are very closely linked with subjects, so let's quickly review our verbs. Hopefully we're pretty familiar with them. So verbs, as we should know, describe the action being done or link 2 words together when they're linking verbs. So a few things you can ask yourself to help you find the verb. What is the subject doing? Or what is being done to the subject? Or is the subject being described? Okay, so those three questions should help you find the verb, because you have to ask yourself, okay, do we have a linking verb that's describing the subject, or, is the subject doing an action? So let's look at our example. So the girl runs every morning. So we see our verb runs, that's what the girl is doing, and the carpet was being swept. We see our verb was being swept. Now notice there we have a verb phrase, okay? So you've got to make sure you're looking for the whole phrase, not just one verb, because sometimes our verb phrase can be pretty long, so you got to keep an eye out for those helping verbs. All right, what I want you to do next, take a second and go ahead and do that practice 1 through 5. So for each of these, just make sure you're finding the verb and circling it. Okay, and this should be a review because we went over our verbs last week. Remember, don't forget your linking verbs. Look for those be verbs. And remember that sometimes they'll be part of a verb phrase. All right, so let's take a look and check how we did. So number 1, the boy carries a dog in a basket. You should have picked as your verb carries. Okay, that's the action. The boy is carrying. That's what he's doing. All right, for number 2, we should have picked act. So the two boys are acting silly. That is their action. Number 3, Jane was sitting. We should have picked was sitting. Okay, that's a verb phrase there. So it tells us that she was sitting. That was her action. All right, number 4, I am so tired today. Got a linking verb there, am. Remember, you should always be having an eye out for those be verbs. So you should have circled am there. And number 5, it feels hot and stuffy in here. Go ahead and make sure you circled feels there. That's one of our tricky linking verbs. It's not a be verb, but it's also not an action verb, so they can kind of sneak by us. All right, so now we're going to try to combine these. So we want to find both the verb and the subject. And as we go through this, we're going to underline our subjects and we're going to circle our verbs. So I want to see that same thing on your paper when I check it tomorrow. So let's do the first 3 together. Number 1, the teacher diligently grades work. So I'm going to look for my subject first. You can look for the verb first if you want. It's just easier for me to find the subject first. So I see that my sentence seems to mostly be about the teacher, and that's my noun near the beginning of the sentence, so I'm going to go ahead and underline that. All right, now I got to ask myself, what is the teacher doing? And I see that she's grading, so I'm going to go ahead and circle grades. All right, let's look at number 2. The lamp was turned off. So it's a pretty short sentence, so we don't have a lot of candidates for subject. I see it's mostly about the lamp. That's pretty much the only noun we really have in there, so that's got to be our subject. And then I got to ask what the lamp was doing or what was being done to it. In this case, it was being turned off. All right, and last one, Paul teases the girl. So I asked myself, who or what is the sentence about? Who or what is performing the action? I see that Paul is the one doing something, and my verb is teases. He's teasing the girl. All right, so now what I want you to do is go ahead and try 4 through 7 on your own. All right, so let's go ahead and check these. For number 4, you should have had Roger Clemens as your noun and throws as the action that he is performing. For number 5, you should have said teacher was your subject and wrote was the verb. So the teacher is writing. That's their action. My grandmother taught me Greek. Number 6, you should have grandmother as your subject and taught as your verb. and then I ate 5 sandwiches for him. I as your subject, ate as your verb. All those were action verbs. They should have stood out to you pretty easily. Alright, one last thing I want to talk about. There's not always just going to be one subject or one verb. Sometimes we'll have something called compound subjects and verbs, meaning there's more than one. So let's look at this example. Sharon and Emily push and pull at the heavy couch. So we see we actually have 2 subjects here, 2 people who are performing the action, Sharon and Emily. Alright, and then we see they're actually performing 2 actions, push and pull. Okay? And a lot of times when you have compound subjects and verbs, you'll see them joined by an and or, just like you do there. Okay? So what I want you to go ahead and do is 1 through 4, and I want you to do the same thing we've been doing. Okay? But this time I want you to make sure you're looking for possibly 2 subjects and possibly 2 verbs. Not every sentence will have compound subjects and verbs, but at least a couple of them will. Alright, so let's go ahead and look at these and check them. So for number 1, Katrina and Ginny are the names of my dogs. In this one, we had a compound subject. We have 2 dogs that the sentence is about, Katrina and Ginny. So we should have chosen both of those as our subject. Now, our verb, we have one of our forms of be. We have a linking verb, are. So we also should have selected that as our verb. Alright, number 2, both dogs run and jump when in the backyard. We still have our dogs as our subject. We didn't name both of them that time, so it wasn't compound, so just dogs can be your subject. But we do have them performing 2 actions, running and jumping. So we want to underline both of those words as our verb. If you look at number 3, Ginny is small, reddish, and fluffy. Ginny is who our sentence is about, so she's going to be our subject, and we have a linking verb is as our verb. Number 4, Katrina is a yellow lab. Katrina is our subject. She's being described in the sentence. And is going to be our linking verb that you should have selected as your verb. Alright guys, so now what I want you to do, turn to your next page. It'll look like this, identifying subjects and verbs. And I want you to do just numbers 1 through 7. Just 1 through 7, no more, no less. Okay? If you do more or less than that, I'm going to assume you didn't watch the end of the video. So 1 through 7, tomorrow in class we'll go over any questions. We'll do some practice together to make sure we're all on the same page. Alright, so if you have any questions, just keep them in your head, write them down, and we'll talk about them first thing tomorrow.